Mr. B.G. Mukhopadhaya, who is the CGM of NABARD, to please give his opening remark.
Distinguished panelists, and equally distinguished audience who are actively engaged with the land dialogue since yesterday. Myself, B.G. Mukhopadhaya, I'm looking after the climate change vertical in my present incarnations at NABARD, and for the entire country I'm managing the funds for climate change under National Adaptation Fund, Green Climate Fund, and also the Adaptation Fund Board Fund, which we are administering throughout the country. And land, particularly this issue is also very close to my heart because I did my doctorate on the land rights on the Operation Baga in West Bengal. So when land tenures and all these things are being talked about, and Dr. Hawk was passionately arguing that why these things should be there or what needs to be done differently, I found the context in which Operation Baga or land tenure security, which was done by the Lieutenant government in West Bengal, was entirely different than the context which you are now present. So I entirely agree with his assertion that the negotiations of the rights, sharing of the produce and cost sharing, crop sharing should be led to the, the two parties, sharecroppers and tenants. There can be different arguments. In fact, the West Bengal, when the Land Tenancy Act was introduced, 1954, then they amended it. And thanks to the very passionate bureaucrat like D. Bandyopadhyay, who was there as a Land Reforms Commissioner, then Bikram Sarkar was there. And equally, Land Reform Minister Binay Chaudhary was one of the very eminent land reform ministers in the country, and he got exemplary support from his chief minister at that time, Mr. Jyoti Basu. And also, he could manage the party, functionaries also to implement the land reforms program, even though they were not very head and heart with the programs, because I was told by Binay Chaudhary at that time itself that we are also facing a lot of obstacles from our own people who owns land. So it's a very difficult and very critical issue. And particularly for the sharing of the produce and all, even though the government of West Bengal in their Land Reforms Act introduced that year, that if the sharecroppers or tenants bring their own inputs and other things into operation, then they will be getting more than 75% of the produce. And if they don't give the inputs, 50-50. But the law was there, but it was more flouted, in the actual field level situation. So it is quite appropriate what Dr. Hawk and his colleagues have worked out in the land reform tenancies legislation, that it should be led negotiation. But there should be some sort of an oversight body, which I fully agree with Madam Kulkarni when she was making presentations in the beginning of the session in the forenoon, that there should be some sort of a support, that otherwise how one can negotiate with the landowner, which is in a higher pedestal, and the sharecropper or tenants who is in the lower pedestal. So there needs to be some kind of a oversight mechanism where their rights, their protection of the rights are properly ensured. And that itself is a contentious issue. Now, land rights is a sort of a bundle of rights which is enshrined in the law or you are legally protecting. It needs a complementary of inputs. It needs a complementary of services both from public sectors and private sector. After liberalization, the entire discourse has changed for the private sector engagement and even for the donor agencies and other agencies which earlier used to support many of the things like public goods, and they used to support through the government agencies. Now they are more engaged with the private sector initiatives. But I do believe land as a very important issue where production security, food security, hunger, malnutrition, then sustainable food system, all these things are inseparably linked. We need to see that how public goods category can be embedded in our entire policy dialogue, so that the people, those who will be producing the food, mostly small farmer holder, they can be protected and their rights are protected, and they can be equally supported through the government institutions also, public service institutions also, because if everything has to be brought from the market, everything will be costly, and in that case their productions will be so costly that they will not be able to get that price in the market. And at the same time, they should be protected, some sort of a mechanism like minimum support price and other things which has been thrown overboard to protect, because many times farmers are producing more and then they don't get the price. And you know what has happened in the soybean in Madhya Pradesh, what has happened in groundnut productions in Gujarat last year, that despite the best production, they could not get the price. So there is a need for protections from the government side also to the smallholder agriculture, so that whatever they are producing from the land as a factor of productions, their security on many of the basic goods which are provided by the public institutions, that is duly supported. Otherwise, simply giving a record of rights, telling them that, okay, your tenure is established, it will not make a fruitful endeavor, whatever may be the circumstances. So to that extent, the complementary of services should be ensured. It may not be just like a fundamental rights of the systems, but some sort of directive principles, and the state has a big role to play, and it is still has a larger outreach, and that's why we need to do more innovations in this plane. And that is how I try to connect my opening remarks with the pilot project, which we have collaborated with GIZ, that is One World No Hunger. Their minister was very passionate about that. There should be one shared paradigm, that the world is one and there should not be any hunger. Theoretically it is so, but when it comes to the negotiating table, you must have found in the recent type of climate dialogue, also G20 summit, and also the recent US presidential order to curtail the environmental protection agencies and the support to the developing world in the climate change initiatives, where poor and vulnerables are there, and they should be supported under the Green Climate Fund initiatives. A lot of support system has been reduced in the international level. And in the national level also, the things which are earlier thought of as an inevitable support system which will come to the people of the lower ranks or the economically vulnerable sections of the population, that is not happening. So I found the shared paradigm of one world and no hunger is a very good initiative which was introduced by GIZ in our country, and they have taken 2 states, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Probably if the project becomes successful, they will be doing it in more number of states, and they are trying to collaborate with the NGOs, civil society organizations. I found that of late there has been a heavy crackdown on the civil society's organization. I believe that if we want to be successful, we need private sector, we need public sector, we need equally civil society organizations. Having done the work throughout the country for the last 30 years, that there are good NGOs, there are bad NGOs, there are ugly NGOs, but there are good government servants, there are bad government servants, there are ugly civil servants. There are good private sector, there are bad public sector, there are ugly private sector. So we should not be bothered about the bad and ugly. There are many good people who are committed, passionate, they want to make a difference. We need to collaborate with them, we need to find an allies, and we need to make a broad range coalition to make a transformative change in this land dialogue. Particularly for the land reforms, I know some of the few bureaucrats like P.S. Apu, D. Bandapad, Bikram Sarkar, then S.R. Shankaran, B.N. Yugandhar, Meenakshi Sundaram, and others, those who have passionately taken up the land rights cause, and that's how the things have changed. And that's how, we could find the transformative change in the entire country. So if we can ignite that plug through that, system, even in the bureaucratic systems also, we can make a lot of changes, which was amply evident in the Operation Barga in West Bengal. It was purely a government initiative through the bureaucrats, not the party functionaries, CPM party functionaries and all. It was by the bureaucrat, and it was done by the passionate bureaucrat like D. Bandapad with the backing of supports from the government agencies, and they could make a transformative change. In fact, the 2 or 3 rounds of left-front government winning the votes was because of the Operation Barga program. But later on, they didn't invent, and that's how they became moribund, and after some time, they became irrelevant. So we need to continuously reinvent the wheel, because at some point of time, it may be very contextually relevant, but in some other points, it may not be relevant. So that's how tenancy reforms legislation, which Dr. Haq and his colleagues have worked out for the country as a whole. It's a really welcome step, and we should appreciate that he has taken enormous pains, because I know from the last 30 years, he was one of my supervisors in my thesis, also in Operation Barga program, and how passionately he has been doing the work when he was Director Center for Agrarian Studies, and also in the in the National Center for Agriculture, Economics and Policy Research, IRI and all. And one of the themes always he used to take with the land, and he has produced a lot of works on that, because he really passionately believed on this thing, and he did it, and that's how the things have happened. And land dialogue is one of the very important, significant international dialogue, which can be an international dialogue, because many of the neighboring countries have started talking to me that how that land reforms change has taken place. And I said that join in the dialogue of Dr. Hogg. He will be able to guide you in this regard. Even in Myanmar, the colleagues were asking that they wanted to know from India's experiences of the land transformations, how they are doing it. So I think India's experiences have got a lot of relevance for the neighboring countries, whether we do it in agriculture, food security, nutrition security, sustainable development goals, or the land reforms, transformation which is there. Because now the thing is, it's a very good, learning pot for that. And that is how we need to have broad-based coalitions of private sector, public sectors, NGOs, civil societies, organizations to really know from each other and which one will work at what circumstances. The NGOs, framework, which can work wonderfully well in Gujarat or Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, it may not be that much in Punjab and Haryana. Or for instance, in some parts of Jammu and Kashmir where I have been working, or in Arunachal, to find a good NGO is a hell of a job. Then I had to do a separate innovations for, tribal Wadi program in Arunachal, and it is running very well. So everywhere we have to need to reinvent the wheel, and we need to reinvent that what will work. And that is how I find that's a really very complex challenge, I should say, in the tenancy legislation, because I have seen it happen in the Badhanathan committee when we did for the cooperative reform. The Model Cooperative Act was there. Every state government was trying to, put his own, spoils on the wheel so that the entire, law gets diluted. And it's a really mammoth and Herculean effort to bring them on board, because what is agreed upon by Gujarat and Maharashtra or in Andhra Pradesh may not be agreeable to Punjab or maybe other states. So, making an uniform law for the entire country is a really hell of a challenge, and I can understand the complexity of the issues. Learning from, real life experiences on the cooperative reforms legislation, because it's still on the work in progress. And despite all supports, government support, funding support, financial support, technical support, technological support, still, to make an inclusive financial program through PACs, which is one of the important outlets in the country. 150,000 PACs outlets are there. If we can just make them a financial unit for transactions of all kinds of people, for the rural people, there is no need for MFIs or many other things than that. But still, it's a long way to go. There are a lot of politicization, a lot of other issues are there where it becomes really very difficult here. Coming back to the dialogue on the part, I find that one world no hunger GIZ's work in the two states, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, 42,000 hectares, they have almost completed 1/4 of it. It has got a great potentials to identify how public-private partnership or NGOs partnership, the land can be transformed. They can be a sort of a good, land is a sort of a bundle of rights. Also, it is a physical unit which should be protected, rehabilitated, and restored. Now, if I don't have any property rights on the land, what is my incentive to invest? That is precisely all of you have been arguing in the earlier session. Because if I don't have any incentive, we find from the financial institutions that it becomes enormously difficult to invest for long-term investment, particularly for the tenurial land. It happened in West Bengal also. Short-term crop loan they were getting from the financial system, which was ensured by the help of our banking system. But when it comes to the term lending, investment, like suppose if you want to do a deep tube well or shallow tube well or some other permanent improvement measures, when you need to have 5 to 7 years of lease, to get the return on investment and repay the service, servicing the debt, that becomes a problem, because as a sharecropper, if I just go for 1 year, second year I may not be secure, or third year I may be evicted. So this is a really complex challenge, that if you want to have a permanent investment on land, there should be some sort of a security, and that is how the legislations will come a long way in this regard. But I am still very clear that unless the complementarity of service are ensured from the government system, you can do an act, Public Service Act, so that at least seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, credit, and other extension measure, which has been totally, denuded, or I should say castrated after the liberalizations, particularly for the public extension system, which was very good. But after some point of time, they said that extension can be done private. I have a long list of quarrels with the World Bank people, even in their headquarters. I said, tell me one country where private sector extension has been successful. Because I did, when I was a fellow in East West Center at University of Hawaii, did entire, study that where private sector extension, because I want to learn from them. Then they said Costa Rica, it's not even a small district in Haryana. And you say that I should emulate in a country like India, Costa Rica's example. Because in a country like India, it's a mammoth, it's a very huge, it's a very gigantic. One small typical space, it is not a year which can be scaled up or which can be, replicated. Even I tell my German friends also that in German, in fact, I was told by this Desai, this Ashok Desai, when he was the advisor of Prime Minister Manmohan Gandhi, Manmohan Singh, on the liberalizations era started, that you must study the DFI's work in Germany. There is a very good book by Alexander Gershenkaran, which is Economic Backwardness in a Historical Perspective. I bought it from Amazon there in US. It is $160, very rare books. I got it. An entire development in Germany happened bank-led, which is a development financial institution-led. It's not a private sector-led growth. Now, suppose if I want to replicate the German experiences here, I cannot replicate the private sector growth, which is impossible, where 50% of the people do not have any basic amenities, and you want to join in the market. Even in Inam is also facing a lot of difficulties, which I know I don't want to share at this moment to make you pessimistic about the market. But I would suggest that where the market works, let it work. But where the public goods categories are there it should be supported from the public good. And there I think GIZ's work in the one world, no hunger in the 2 states, and it should be replicated to other states. I have told internally and Stefan that it should be expanded to other states so that we can have different kinds of model, how public-private partnership, how public NGO partnership can really restore the land degradation, can really ensure the food security, can ensure some of the things of sustainable food production. IFRI has done very good work, International Food Policy Research Institute. I was trying to compare with China and India, because if you want India to be, really considering international, arena, then we need to bring China into focus. I was just trying to compare that scientists which are available. You know, China with their landmass, they have a 40,000 scientists. Some particular year. We have got 10,000 scientists. So we need to fill up many of the posts in ICR and research system so that they can produce the public good research. And in fact, earlier ICR research and IRA research, Dr. Hawk knows this very well, that investment on agriculture research and R&D has much more internal rate of return than anything else. Peter Hazel's study on the physical connectivity, Dr. Hawk, Sengan Fan and Peter Hazel, they did it, where they have found that just one connectivity, physical connectivity, can increase the farmers' access to market manifold than what it was not there. So the government support for the rural infrastructure projects, which we are supporting, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund, and also we are trying to do it in the private initiative and also the government agencies, we found that there is a tremendous scope to increase the physical connectivity, electronic connectivity, knowledge connectivity, and also the market connectivity. So wherever it works for the private sectors, we are trying to engage in the private sector. Wherever there should be public goods category, there is no compromise, because you cannot say that they will buy from the market. Much of the suicides in Yatmal area in Maharashtra, it was because of the privatizations of many of the things, which was not there even in Gujarat, adjacent test, which was successful. So there, I fully endorse the view there should be some sort of a public, support for the farmers, because that is much more necessary. And to take the land dialogue further, we need to innovate, because many of the innovations are necessary, like many of the electronics and other which have been done. I really, appreciate the works which has been done by the government of Karnataka. That is the Bhumi project, where land digitizations of land records have been done. Then it has been connected with the banking system online. And then now the bankers can see the records and transactions from that year, that whether this land belongs to her, whether that land belongs to him. And then they can just give the that collateral security, they can update it, give the credit for short-term loan, term loan, and absolutely it's a hassle-free manner, transparent, and it is also effective, efficient. So that kind of system, how technology can make it, bring transformative change, that is one example. We should follow similar example. Unfortunately, even though the central government support is fully available for the digitization of land records and other things, but many of the state governments are lagging in this regard. So you can understand that it is not just always that money has been given, still they have not been able to comply with many of the requirements of the land digitization. When I talked to Rajiv Chawlaji in Karnataka 7 years back about the Bhumi project, he said the biggest obstacles he faced from his own department for the land digitization. And I don't want to reason out why he faced that resistance. Because you know that in the land transactions and other things, what kind of corruptions, misgovernance and other things are there. So if the things become transparent, who will be the winner and who will be the losers? You can easily make out. So when you try to bring a change in the system where somebody will be winner, somebody will be loser, you should always see, my losers should not be the farmers, my losers should not be the women SHGs, my losers should not be the people who are most vulnerable. If I can see that the benefits accrued to them is much more than the cost which I am incurring at the cost of some government bureaucrats, government servants, or the cartels or the interest groups, I should try to break that down. And that is what precisely Rajiv Chawla and the government of Karnataka, they did it. He said that he got immense support from S.M. Krishna when he was the chief minister. And he said, go ahead with this program. So that kind of champion should be there, whether it is in the bureaucracy, whether it is in the banking system, whether it is in the NGO system, whether it is in the private sector, unless there is a champion to champion the cause of land and the development, things will not happen just because you have issued a directive from the Niti Aayog or from the government ministry. This is a very evident experience from my own, work in several parts of the country where they were telling it cannot be done in Jammu Kashmir. I have seen that it can be done. And we actively engaged with the people, which was a totally militant affected area, without going in the Z category security, talked to the people, engaged the people, brought them in table, and they did enormously good things. You can see, and then Boda was highly appreciated. He said that you should go and always try to do all kinds of things like that. So I would see that these are the many examples that there in our country where many innovations are possible, and that can be a pace setter for the land reforms dialogue which Dr. Hawk has taken up. And I would appreciate that this kinds of initiative what GIZ has taken up, it should be taken up in other states also, so that land dialogues can go on a much wider platform. Take the technology frontier, like Uberizations of land records should be also there, where they can transact between the buyers and sellers, but without losing. Those who are the weaker, they should not lose in the game. Similarly, in the case of technology transformations, not IT, biotechnologies and all, when I talk to the Chinese people, they said that we have not allowed any companies, biotech companies, to increase and enhance the prices. Similar things we should do it in our government. China being a communist country, they do it. If I want to do it, then many multinational companies will raise high-end yuan price. Oh, it's very priced and all that. But they have been able to keep the price low without change for 8 to 10 years. Can you imagine? So this is the fear of a government, also that whether if you just give it a monopoly rights to these people, next year they will price it up and jack it up and they don't have their own interest. Yeah. So some sort of a regulatory oversight is the need of the hour. I think I have taken more than whatever it is here. There was no fixed time. Opening batsman, so I could play like Sachin Tendulkar. So thank you very much, and I appreciate